So, I'm coming at you pretty fired up today. Unfortunately, the big guy's not here. He's feeling a little under the weather
Mm.
again. His voice is having to be saved for our big event at Big Rock Candy Mountain tonight. But I had such an incredible experience with Retrieving Freedom in Waverly, Iowa, the origin of RFI, at a brewery last night to kick off a tour that we're going to do across Missouri, across Iowa. And I brought in a longtime friend who I haven't seen in person in quite some time, who's got a new company that's helping people tell their story. And he came and filmed, and I know that what we created last night is going to help us tell the story of RFI to many other breweries, restaurants, bars, any kind of event or any kind of event space where we could come share the Goodwill story that we have about service dogs and have a good time doing it. So it went so well last night. I said, can we get on a podcast tomorrow to continue catching up with all that's transpired in our lives and what we're so excited about today? I'm Brandon Butler.
I'm Teeg Stouffer. And I should say more than that. I suppose my name's a good start, maybe, but I'm a filmmaker who lives in Iowa, and I've had the good pleasure of being able to do a lot of things, and the great pleasure of getting to do some of those with Brandon Butler.
Oh, man. Well, you are one of those guys that's just continued to move forward and go through all kinds of different iterations of professional careers. And when it all comes together, when all those experiences come together and you find yourself in the vein that you're most comfortable, and man, you are such an amazing storyteller, helping other people tell stories, coaching other people, taking all that corporate experience and taking this nonprofit
Oh my gosh, I
experience.
can't believe you have
Can you
a
believe this?
stewardship kit.
How far back does this go? So I think
don't
this
know,
is
a
a good
decade at
place to
least.
start. This is what you were doing when we met many years ago.
Yeah.
And when I first came to realize what a special guy you are, and our connection between taking care of the resources that we enjoy spending time in so much. So give us a little history on recycled fish.
A little history on the nonprofit. Yeah, so man, when we met, Brandon and I met because we were going back and forth from the Midwest to Washington, D.C. We were working on an issue. It was the Vanishing Paradise was the overarching organization who was bringing us out there, and we were working on, Deepwater Horizon problem and getting those funds oriented towards Gulf Coast restoration. That's how we met. And were you outdoor writer at that time? Was that the main hook for you, or had you started conservation at Conservation Federation?
No, it was pre-Conservation Federation.
Okay,
So
you're just not just conservation writer, but that was kind of your angle in. You were a conservation writer at the time, or an outdoor writer at the time, but you weren't working vocationally in conservation at the time.
No, I was currently the marketing manager at Battenfeld Technologies.
Okay, I got you.
Part of Midway USA at the time, and is American Outdoor Brands now.
So you were working in the outdoor industry on the for-profit side.
Mm-hmm.
I was working on the nonprofit side, founded a nonprofit called Recycled Fish. By the time I founded that organization in 2003, and so catch and release had mostly caught on, and so for the most part, the fishing world was like, yeah, we the reason we like catch and release is because we want to catch more and bigger fish, and we get it that if we let some fish go, we'll be able to catch more and bigger fish. And so catch and release had kind of caught on. It actually hadn't caught on everywhere yet. Kind of get to that in a second, but Recycled Fish was helping anglers understand that other things we do in our everyday life can also lead to catching more and bigger fish. And what we were really doing, I loved your episode a couple episodes ago with Joe Moore, because he was talking about this, or you guys were talking about this, about how a lot of times outdoorsmen, because of political leanings, will be dismissive of everyday choices that we can make that'll help our waters. So we were really talking about how our lifestyle runs downstream, everyday choices affect our waters, really reframing our thinking about ourselves less as consumers of a resource and more as stewards of a resource. So we're really trying to get people thinking about themselves as stewards and making it okay to you don't have to buy a Subaru, but maybe you would choose to not roll coal, to like steal a line from
Right.
your Joe Moore conversation, or at least maybe you're gonna like, okay, fine, we'll have a recycling bin at our house, fine, because I get it, like ultimately that does lead to clean waters, which leads to more and bigger fish. And okay, fine. We maybe I don't want to lay hold of this whole climate change thing. There's undeniable science about the quality of our water. Like, and the things that solve some of those other climate change oriented issues, they also solve water quality problems. So we just really focused it on water quality, and really trying to mobilize the angling public as the primary stewards of our natural resources. But that's not really where we found traction, surprisingly. I mean, we got a little traction there, and we were able to make some headway there and do some meaningful work there. But what actually happened with recycled fish is that the world of ice fishing hadn't caught on to even catch and release. Like, they were still not there yet. And that all that stuff I was just talking about was so big, and we just weren't resourced at that level. And frankly, I wasn't a good enough executive director to get us to that level. And what happened was the world of ice fishing was like a small enough court we were able to play on it. And so we became the de facto cause of ice fishing in the way that Trout Unlimited kind of at the time was sort of the de facto cause of fly fishing. We became the cause of ice fishing. And so we really brought a stewardship ethic to ice fishing, and we really helped change that culture to a stewardship mindset. That's really where we made our big change.
That's super cool. Yeah, we talked about making conservation cool for
Yeah.
guys that drive diesel trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a couple examples that we can use, one you just touched on, catch and release.
Yeah,
50 years ago, that was crazy talk.
sure.
You caught a fish and you're going to put it back? Like, isn't that the whole purpose of going fishing, is to like get dinner?
Yeah.
And we always enjoyed it,
Mm.
but we had a mission of putting food on the table. Well, times have changed a little bit, and there are still some people that are fishing for their food, but most of us aren't. And to be able to enjoy the recreation side of it while making sure you're taking care of that resource, putting those big ones back, keeping the right
Sure.
size fish, and enjoying that. So that's one example of like a complete cultural change
Totally.
within sportsmen. Also, deer hunting. If you just
Mm-hmm.
go back to when I started hunting in, say, 1990, if it was brown, it was down. I
Yeah.
mean, if it had an antler, it was on its way to the bed of a truck. And now you think about how, the quality deer management movement came in, and it's created a monster on the other end.
Sure. So
You
has
know,
catch
like,
and release. So
yeah,
has catch and release.
it's created its own monster in the sense
Mm-hmm.
that like you're shamed for shooting, something that isn't deemed a trophy by the
Mm-hmm.
highest elite class of deer
Yeah.
hunters out there. So
Yeah.
so it's crazy to look just over the course of our lifetimes at how much that mentality can change and how culture, continues to evolve.
Yeah.
I do have a quick ice fishing snippet.
Let's
So
hear it.
I went to Devil's Lake
Yeah.
recently. It was amazing. I got to catch the largest yellow perch in my life.
Uh-huh.
People that have tuned in for a while know that I'm a yellow perch fanatic. I'm on a mission to grow the state record in my own personal lake. Some of the bass we're putting in now are probably going to make that a little harder. But, anyways, I got out there to Devil's Lake, and or I was on my way to Devil's Lake, and I'm in Chicago, and I'm in the Admirals Club. I know, hoity-toity, fancy, lucky me, but I'm in the Admirals Club, and all of a sudden, two guys sit down, and I'm working. I'm trying to work. That's like kind of the point, is it gives you access to a space where typically it's quiet and you can work. And these two guys sit down, and they look like cast members from the old Saturday Night Live Chicago Bears superfan
Uh-huh.
skits with
Yeah.
like Chris Farley and all them.
Uh-huh.
And they're just as loud and they're just as crude and they're like, telling stories. And I'm like, man, I'm a Chicago guy. I get it. I like it. Like, if I'd have seen these people on any continent in any country, I'd have been like, those two dudes are from Chicago without even hearing them speak. And they
Mm-hmm.
were. Um, and I was getting annoyed, honestly, until I heard them say something about ice fishing.
Hmm.
So then, me being me, I butt into their conversation. I'm like, I like ice fishing too. I'm actually on my way to go ice fishing. And
Yeah.
we start talking about Devil's Lake, and they're going
Yeah.
out there, and I'm going out there. Well, as after the trip, I'm in Fargo getting on the plane, and I'm walking down the aisle to my seat, and I hear Brandon Butler, and I look, and it's Mike McNett.
Oh, no way. Otis
Yeah,
McNett. I love Mike so
I do
much.
too. I haven't seen him a
Yeah.
while, and he called me out, and it turns out those dudes were part of his crew.
Oh,
So,
that checks out.
and they're like, hey man, we really thought you were cool until we found out you know Mike McNett. Now what's wrong with you, and started giving me a bunch of grief, but it was super cool to like run across that, so stereotypical Chicago crowd of
Yeah.
guys. And
Yeah.
but what a great time out there in
That's so
Devil's
good.
Lake.
That's
So
so good. Well, if you think Devil's Lake is good, and you're right, Devil's Lake is good, you got to make it to Cascade. It's not Cascade is not what it was 3 years ago or even 2 years ago, but it's still absolute playground of massive, massive perch. So if you're willing to get on a plane and experience just gigantic perch, I've never seen anything like it. It's unbelievable, the body condition on these fish. It's
now I'm taking a
unbelievable.
stab here, and I'm gonna probably embarrass myself. But is that in Idaho?
Yeah, it's in Idaho. Yep,
It
it's
is
in
in
Idaho,
Idaho.
and
All right,
that's the
all
other
right.
thing. Like so many places where we ice fish, I mean, they're beautiful. They're beautiful in their own way, but like North Dakota is super, super flat, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why Devil's Lake is growing. Is because it's so flat, and it's just if the water rises an inch, it'll go another mile.
Yep, yep.
Just like that. Whereas Cascade is mountains, so you're just sitting. It's kind of rare to be sitting in this great big basin and mountains rising up around, and you get fog trapped in there, and it's so it's otherworldly, and then you cut a hole in the ice and the fish are pulling up are otherworldly. We've all seen so many 6 to 12 inch perch that when you catch a 13-inch perch, you're like, look at that thing's huge. And a lot of those 13-inch perch are still pretty fusiform. They're big cigars. You pull this thing up the hole, and it's like a big Yeti tumbler coming up the hole. It's like a walleye coming up the hole. They're real tall and they're super fat. And then, even a 13-inch Cascade perch looks so big. But the 13s, after a while, it's not. You shouldn't even wear out on them. But you're like, okay, just another 13. Anywhere else, you'd be like,
Biggest fish ever.
best fish in my life. Let's get a reproduction made. And there you're swinging for a 16 or 17,
Yep.
and you're fishing these big aggressive blade baits, and you're fishing very aggressively, like the way you'd fish for walleyes. And then you accidentally catch a big trout or something because you're up in the mountains, and then that's so rad too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I did not break the 14-inch mark. I was gonna get a mount done if I broke the 14-inch mount, or the 14-inch mark.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to like 13 and a half. And the one guide's like, yeah, anything over 14 is wall worthy. The other guy's like, you don't mount anything until it hits 16. So then it kind of like
Yeah.
reset me to 15. I'm like, I'll split the difference. But I didn't get it. And that just gives me a reason to go back. But while I got you on the topic of ice fishing, because I'm not much of an ice fisherman. I mean, when I
I'm
was a
super
kid,
into it. I'm super
when I was
into it.
a
I helped
kid,
popularize it.
we went out and sat on buckets, and we
Yeah.
had the old ice rods where you like unwound
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Man.
like
Yeah.
the line.
Uh-huh.
So shout out to Addie at Clam and
Yeah.
my friend Captain Pat Camerton.
Mm-hmm.
They just sent me a really nice clam outfit. I
Nice.
needed that. I can't wait to start using it more. But I guess I've got the bug, man, because now
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I don't have any ice fishing rods.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I've been looking at them on Clam's website. There's all these different links and line weights.
Yeah.
Like what is the 5 weight, the fly
Uh-huh.
rod equivalent, or the medium light spinning rod? What is the like do it all equivalent in an ice rod?
These days, it's probably a 22 or 24-inch rod. 24-inch rod, probably. 24-inch, they do the same thing, medium light. 24-inch rod, and these days, most waters, probably one of those level wind style reels, so you don't have spin. So one of the Clam level wind reels paired up to a 24-inch medium light rod is probably like your all-purpose, use it everywhere. But it's like anything, like You use the fly rod equivalent. Ice is more nuanced than fly fishing even. It's more like the bass market where there's so much variation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, ice rods are one of those things. I got a couple dozen of them. And on any trip, I'm probably going to use a few of them because they are very specialized. That's what I love about ice fishing. There's probably two things I love about ice fishing. It's pretty technical. And so the difference between a very quick shake of your, like trembling like you drank too much coffee when you hold your rod, or like a more of a jib, bob, 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 can be the difference between 100 fish day and a 20 fish day. Like, the smallest nuances can make the biggest difference in ice fishing, and that precision and the field of play that's a 6-inch hole versus even in open water fishing, every cast you're covering so much water. It's a very precise game. So I love that about it. I love the precision about it. And then the other thing is it's so visual. It's so visual because you're looking at sonar the whole time. So even if you're using a Vexillar and you're not using, some of the new forward-facing sonar technologies. Even if you're using a Vexillar, you see that one line that's your jig, and then you see this other line. If the other line just showed up, that's a fish. And then those two lines are getting closer. Two lines are getting closer. Two lines are getting closer. Oh no, it's fading away. It's going away. It's going its way. It's going away. So the visual aspect of it, we're men are so visual, and so the visual aspect of seeing that thing play out, or like the line, oh, it's getting closer, closer, closer. Oh, it just got a bite. He's on. Like that visual thing excites us, and so I love that about ice fishing.
So this was the first time I've ever done that. So like I said, my old ice fishing experiences was taking a bucket out, drilling a hole, dropping a worm down, hoping we caught some bluegill in one of the small lakes in our subdivision. I did go to Lake of the Woods one time and got to do kind of a guided one of those hut things, and that was fun. But I don't think we used a Vexillar then either. So for anybody that's not kind of tracking what Teej is saying here, it's like, it's a flasher, and once they teach you how to read it, you can watch your own lure or jig just kind of bounce in there. It's a line, you can bring it up, you can bring it down, and you see that kind of like moving up on the circle, going down on the
Looks
circle.
like a World War II sonar.
So then if yours is up here, then on the circle, another line starts coming up. That's the fish.
Yeah.
And what is so frustrating is when he's saying they get like this close together, and then this one starts going back down this way. And you're like, no! So you start lowering it down, and and then even worse, man. We had the forward-facing sonar. What do you call it? I mean,
there's live scope or whatever.
Live scope, we had live scope going. So now you're like actually looking at fish with about the same quality of pixelation that the original Atari had.
Yeah.
So now you can see your lure down there on the bottom. You can see these like Atari version of fish coming up to it, staring at it, and then just not eating it. Yeah. So I don't know if it makes it better or worse. What's your take? Better or worse?
Better all day long.
Better all day.
But here's the thing. If I could only ever ice fish, then I think, I might feel a certain way about it. But where I live in Iowa, we get 2 to 3 months of ice fishing. It's just right. We're losing ours right now. It's 55 degrees out there today. Our ice is going away, and we got a great season this year. I feel like if we can ice fish where I live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, if I can ice fish through Valentine's Day, if I got on around Christmas or a little before Christmas, we can fish Christmas through Valentine's Day, good season. If we get on as early as Thanksgiving and as late as St. Patrick's Day, long season, where I live, where I live. So the earliest we ever get ice fish around here is Thanksgiving. That's very early. The very late would be St. Patrick's Day. It's the latest I've ever ice fished. If we get that, that's a very long season. Christmas through Valentine's Day, that's about right. And that's about right. That's about right. Then we're ready to break out the long rods again, the fly rods. Our first ice fishing here is our first open water fishing here is a fly opportunity, or we get a catfish bite right at ice out. There's always, in a certain impoundments, there's dead shad. And those dead shad, catfish move up and gorge on them. Shad don't like cold water. Though enough of them will live that you'll maintain a population of shad, but you get a big die-off. So especially this winter, it was really cold. Certain places, if the wind was right, if all the water levels were right, there's going to be a big shad kill. The ice will go off, and for 2 weeks after that, there's going to be a massive bite. And so you go collect these dead shad and catch a bunch of catfish.
Man, we've got such incredible catfishing within 10 miles of my house. I mean,
really?
I'm probably 7 or 8 miles from a boat ramp on the Missouri River where they run
Mm,
a bunch of catfish tournaments. And
mm-hmm.
these guys, they don't get excited until these fish are 70, 80 pounds. You know, they're
Okay,
catching
gotcha.
gigantic blue cats out of the Missouri.
Mm,
And I've lived here now 15 years
mm,
and never done it. Like I've
mm.
gone out there and caught some channel cats and such, but I've never gone big catfish hunting with these guys, and I keep begging them to take me and nobody will.
You'll
So
get your
I'm
chance. You'll get your
I'm gonna
chance.
get my chance this summer now that I'm living out here the way I am. I think I'll get in on it, but I just want to watch. Like I want to I want to fight one too, but more
Yeah.
than anything, I just want to be up close and personal with a 100-pound catfish.
This game that I'm talking about is a shallow water game usually because the shallow water warms up. A lot of times these shad blow up into the shallow water and they die off because they're in shallow water. So, a lot of this is like a foot and a half to 3 feet. So you're catching these catfish, and this is a channel cat game for the most part, and these fish tend to weigh 2 to 7 pounds. But after a winter of catching crappies and bluegills, which I love, it's fun to catch 2 to 7 pound catfish, but you're catching them in the shallow water. So a lot of times, rather than bulldogging down into deep water, which is how we so often catch catfish, they're running out like fish on flats. And catfish pull hard. They've got that flat head, that big strong forked tail, and they pull hard. And they coming out of cold water. That water's 34 to 38 degrees. So if you want to bring a few home for a fish fry, they're a terrific choice for selective harvest, and they're the best they'll ever going to be because they're in this 38-degree water, and they've been chilling all winter. So they're really good.
Hmm. No, that's so true. I think cold water fillets, no matter the species, are better. Cold water crappies, hard to beat, man. Hard to
Amen.
beat.
Amen.
Um, I was so excited about our conversation last night on moving the brewery tour forward
Me too.
that I dug into a Tom Rosenbauer
Mm.
Driftless Area podcast this morning. So Tom Rosenbauer, of course, the
Mm-hmm.
Orvis Fly Fishing podcast, and just listen to those guys from the Driftless Angler talking about, you can fish those driftless region streams all winter long.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but I feel like the next brewery tour stop needs to be up there in Decorah.
Decorah, yeah.
Hopefully, working with Toppling Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
Worked with them in the past on a Prairie Prophets episode, so there's a relationship there already.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we can kind of dig into that real quick.
Yeah,
I
let's
mean,
talk about it. And listen, before you get us up to Decorah, and by the way, we should go to Decorah. I mean, you should take that thing to Decorah. I want to come see you in Decorah. Anybody who has anything bad to say about Decorah can't be my friend. It's a great place. It's an amazing place. We have here in Cedar Rapids not only a bunch of great breweries. You host one of those here, but we also have the furthest south fly fishing stream or trout stream in Iowa is in Cedar Rapids. We're the very southernmost trout stream, and it runs right through like the city. It literally runs along 380, and it's a cold water stream, and so we have trout right here in Cedar Rapids. And then you got to go north a little bit to Manchester to get the next one, and then on up and on and up. But this little kind of corner of the driftless where it tails out.
are you gonna divulge the name of this stream?
It's called McLeod Run.
Really?
It's
Like
not a
the McLeod,
secret.
like the McLeod Rainbow.
I think it's probably named after the McLeods, who had like the phone book company and then the trucking company and whatever, who were from here.
Hmm. Well, that's cool,
McLeod
man.
Run. Yep.
We might have to
Just a
check
little
that out.
tiny trickle. Next time you're here, we'll get a fly rod out and go catch some trout out of it. The sad thing about it, and this ties back to so much of the stuff you talk about and that I've talked about and worked on over the year. This is really sad. I mentioned how it runs along 380, runs right through town. Every so often, that whole thing dies off. It is a trout-bearing stream. It's cold, and when all is well, it does fine. But it's in an urban environment. Every few years, we screw it up and pollute it, and everything then it dies. And then they restock it, and then it comes back, and whatever.
Well, that's similar to what Joe and I were talking about too, with those streams we grew up with in Northwest Indiana, tributaries of Lake Michigan, like the Little Calumet, Salt Creek, Trail Creek. They get incredible steelhead and salmon runs into them, but you got to constantly monitor the water quality, monitor what's going on with all the mills and everything around there. So
Yeah.
thankfully, it's improved so much. Like
Yeah.
I definitely want to be one of those people that gives credit where credit is due on both sides of the coin. Like,
Mm.
we can be very honest and say that the industrialization of the South Shore of Lake Michigan is what basically destroyed the South Shore of Lake Michigan and those
Hmm.
rivers. But we can't change history. All we can do is acknowledge the fact that many of those same companies are now working to improve the water quality there
Yeah,
and have turned the corner. And you can't say I'm not one to blame today's generation for what their grandparents did.
yeah, yeah,
And we're making improvements and constantly trying to put in safeguards that watch out for our water quality. And of course, there's some bad actors out there, but as we're talking about this, as me and Joe were talking about this, like, there's a swell. There's people who care,
totally.
and it's very evident.
Yeah.
So,
That thing you're talking about how we think about our grandparents or how people will use, what's happened in the past. It can be used positively or negatively. That's that thing of heritage, and I have dwelled in this place of heritage and then of legacy so much. It's the kind of the cornerstone of my film company and what I'm doing now. We'll get onto that, I'm sure, but I think it's so important. We don't focus on it. We don't pull it to the front of our intentional thought. It's our subconscious thought. So often, what's driving our conscious thought is considerations that are running like down in our operating system around heritage and we think so little of our legacy, and we should think more about it. We can talk more about that. I want to talk about, you said the other side of the coin. That was like the other side of the challenge coin. I'm going to challenge you.
oh
I'm
man,
going to challenge you on this challenge coin thing. I think what you're doing with this brewery tour is so cool. And, everything, all this RFI stuff, I'm just so enamored with what you're doing. And it was such a pleasure, honestly. I mean, you sort of feel like that's what you're supposed to say. Oh, it's such a pleasure to spend time with you. Whatever. I mean, like in the most sincere way. Really, I enjoyed so much getting to meet some of the recipients of these service animals, and also your trainers. So the little like fun fact on me, my mom was a dog groomer, and my mom and grandma get a lot of like credit in my life for like my love of the outdoors. They were outdoors people. My grandma fished like 4 or 5 days a week. My mom only worked 4 days a week. So every Monday she took me and my brother fishing with my grandma. So mom and grandma and me and my brother Ben fished every Monday,
wow,
during the summer. And we fished at this sweet little lake in central Iowa, the Conservation Lake. It was a private lake, and we would go there every Monday, and it was a treasure of our upbringing, fishing with mom and grandma. But the other 4 days of the week, my mom was a dog groomer. So I grew up kind of in, and she worked. She had a shop outside our house till my brother was born, and then we bought this house, bigger house, and she worked out of our house. So every day, 4 customers would drop off a dog at our house, and my mom would groom them. So I just grew up in this world of that. And then when I was 14, I went to work at a vet clinic. I've always loved dogs, loved the kind of that culture of pets, and the weirdos who love the culture of pets who aren't good at people, so they make their living in pets. And I've just always loved these people in this culture. So, as soon as I was exposed to like your people who are training these dogs and working with these dogs, I'm like, I know these people, and I immediately am drawn to them. And they're doing just such terrific work. There's so many things we can do to earn a living, and this is the kind of thing that if you can do this kind of thing, man, it's so meaningful. The work is so
yeah,
meaningful.
man, that's so nice to hear, and a big part of why I wanted to reconnect in person and become your client, which, add
I'm grateful
client
for
to the
that too.
list, friend, colleague, peer, and
Yeah.
client. Proud to be excited about what we're going to do in the future too. So, invited Teej to come over and help me produce a film to capture our first brewery experience, so we can then sell it to other breweries and maybe bars or restaurants that want to host us for a night. Tej asked me, like, what's the audience, like, what's your goal for this film? And I said, I don't know, man, maybe like 20 people. And I think you were kind of like, huh, like 20 people? I said, I want to create a commercial for the other owners that I'm going to approach about hosting events at their establishment. And I don't think it could have gone any better. So,
Couldn't.
Retrieving Freedom was founded in Waverly, Iowa, which just a huge shout out to that entire community. I
Yeah, what
could
a
live
great
there,
town.
could
Great
live
town.
there so easily. I mean, it is pristine when it comes to cleanliness. You've got the Cedar River flowing right through town, a vibrant, like downtown Main Street. Every building is filled. Crawdaddy outdoors, got kayaks strapped to the front of it. So you're in Iowa, but you've got this like really neat kind of outdoor shop on the main drag that's got whitewater kayaks, and I love that because you wouldn't normally think that would be there. And it
Hmm.
shows that there are people that are willing to peel back a couple layers of the onion to get to the core and see that there are these opportunities wherever you live.
Yeah.
And to have that river there and to have the driftless just north of you, and now I know McLeod Run there in Cedar Rapids, to have all these opportunities uh, matters, but so does having a shop that caters to those opportunities. So
Yeah.
really try to buy something when I go up there at Crawdaddy's, eat at Frederick's, get a pizza at the OP. I'm really finding myself drawn to this community. And Bremer Brewery
Hmm.
hosted us for our first brewery tour. And, Tej, we both love words. And I thought, what a great name, brewery tour. And we're going to go on tour like a band and go from
Hmm.
brewery to brewery to brewery. Well, now people are reading brewery tour and they're thinking they're going to go back behind the bar and see how beer's made. And like, when's the tour take place? I'm like, oh, yeah, you're at the first
It ain't
concert
like
right
that.
now. Like,
Yeah.
we'll be somewhere else next. And so
Hmm.
it's just funny how, like, when you're in a creative situation, when you're, the decision maker, and you don't think from every different angle, there's an opportunity to miss something. So it never dawned on me that anybody wouldn't grasp what I was trying to say with brewery tour. But to those that showed up and didn't get to see how the hops are poured in, I apologize.
Mm.
I'm gonna work on a new nomenclature moving forward. But that being said, it couldn't have gone any better. I mean,
It was
the place
packed.
was the place was packed. Um, Tija's talked a little bit about the challenge coin a minute ago, so I've got challenge coins made from number 1 to 1,000, and each challenge coin has a serial number on it. So the goal is to get an individual to sign up as a monthly donor to Retrieving Freedom for $20 a month, $50 a month, $10 a month, whatever you can afford. We had a deal last night where if you signed up for a challenge coin at a minimum of $10 per month, you got a Big Frig tumbler
Mm.
logoed with RFI's logo. And Big Frig, shout out, has become a great partner to us. Brock and his team up there, awesome people. And then the brewery would fill it up for free. So for one pour. So you got your beer, you got the tumbler, you got your challenge coin. But hopefully you won't keep the challenge coin
Right.
because you assign it to the number that's on it. So when you go in and register, you have challenge coin number 105. Then the challenge is to pass that forward to somebody else who you
Hmm.
think will not only sign up, but take the initiative all the way and then pass it on to somebody else again. And my vision for this is like, if you join Trout Unlimited, you pay your $40 a year, or Ducks Unlimited, or Delta Waterfowl, or Pheasants Forever, whatever you join, you pay that membership fee. That's the base of the pyramid. Like those membership dollars are what
Hmm.
like prop up everything else.
Yeah.
That's where your administrative money comes from. That's where, salaries and all of that comes from.
Hmm.
Because as you move into higher dollar donors, they very often want their money attributed to a cause that they care most about,
Hmm.
which is a blessing and a curse when you're running a nonprofit because you want to do that big programmatic shift kind of work, but you can't do it if you can't pay salaries and
Totally.
keep the lights on in the building. So
Yeah.
you need that balance. Well, Retrieving Freedom has been very much like an inverted pyramid to where we are standing on very few low dollar donors,
Hmm.
those $10 a month, $20 a month donors. And we have, the good graces of some benefactors at the top that keep us afloat. one of my jobs now is to reverse that and establish us in a more traditional way with that big solid base. And the challenge coins can do that.
For
So
sure.
my thought is if we can get all 1,000 of them out and assigned with an average value per coin of $20, that's $20,000 a month, $240,000 a year. And currently that would be about 10% of our budget. So a
Mm-hmm.
10% increase is a heck of a start.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then we can do it again and do it again. So it really hinges on those people, passing it forward.
Yeah.
So Tej called me this morning. I think he was all fired up after his morning Bible study and seeing the vision. And he said, "You're challenged because I'm going to challenge you. And we're going to see whose challenge coin can have more financial value as we continue to push it out into our own network." So thank you,
Yeah.
man,
I
for
want my
challenging me.
serial number to get registered more than your serial number. Let's
Yeah.
find out where
I
this
want your
goes.
serial number to get registered more than mine too, but it ain't going to come
Mhm.
easy.
Yeah. Well, let's see what we can do. And so, yeah, I think it's a clever idea, and I just love what you're doing, Brandon. I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing. Because I've known you for a long time. I've seen you do different things, but I love what those trainers are doing. Like when
Oh
I
man. Yeah.
saw your trainers. So what happened last night is that you're in this noisy brewery, and it's not. If you're an introvert, you're like, please don't make me to go to one of these things. But it's not noisy like that. Like it's vibrant, but like people are just at tables having a good time. They're just chatting and having a good time. But you got all these gorgeous dogs walking around, and like that's an environment where even like a really well behaved dog could not be good. Like it's an insane environment for a dog to be in, with like crazy amount of smells, crazy amount of people, tons of action, tons of other dogs, and all these dogs are just on their A game. They're just like, and a lot of them are like earlier in their walk, and they're with volunteer foster people, and then your trainers are like talking to these volunteers in such a way that it's like they're getting like a master class standing in this thing, and you're overhearing, and it's just so cool. Gorgeous dogs are so doing their job so well. The humans are doing their job so well, and everybody's having a good time. It's so impressive. And then you see people who are recipients of the dogs who are saying things like, I don't even think I'd be alive if it wasn't for this dog.
Mm,
It's just unbelievable. Like,
right.
it's amazing.
And that's the greatest testament, man, is when our clients want to become ambassadors.
Mm-hmm.
And last night we had Terry and Kevin were both there, and exactly what you said. They both credit these dogs to drastically improving their lives.
Yeah.
And they got these dogs completely for free, financially. It
Yeah,
wasn't
that's
for
the other
free.
thing.
I mean,
It's
they
like,
dedicated a lot of their lives to, these United States, and they earn these dogs for sure, but it's only through the generosity of people and businesses and organizations that we can place $50,000 dogs for free with, very deserving veterans and also the families of children with autism.
mhm. So impressive. Everybody's got to jump on this thing, and I love it too. The thing of being able to really make a significant impact, $10 at a time, because you know what's my $10 or $20 a month do? Well, it does something. If I pass this along to a friend and get a friend to do it, well, now I made 40. Well, they pass it along. Now they maybe became 60, and on and on. As you
Yeah.
stack it, it's like now we're talking about some real money. Now we're talking about, okay, we just placed. Maybe my coin helps place a dog this year. That's a big deal.
But
And
$10 matters too, man, because like a bag of food for us is about 50, $60 a bag of food, and we go through 550 to 600 bags of food a year.
mm,
So, if you break down a bag of food, um, however many dogs you can feed with $10. So like if you donate $10 this month, like you're feeding numerous dogs for one day.
mm,
You might feed them all for one day. Like you're making a difference.
I
And
love it.
I know people who need that $10 and are willing
Mm,
to give it. And that's just as impactful, if not more, than that person that can give $1,000 who has, the means to which they never have to worry. So both are highly valued. Both are incredibly appreciated. Um, Never think you can't do something simply because you lack means in one arena. Maybe you
Mm,
don't have money, but you have time. Like you
mm,
come out to the facility, you could help us with something in the facility. Like we desperately need volunteers. Those people, those volunteers that you were talking about last night, they have a specific role. We call them puppy raisers.
mm,
And man, next to maybe being a foster parent, this is about as tough as it can get. Like
mm,
you have to take this puppy at 8 weeks old and keep it until it's about a year old and go through obedience training and you're raising this puppy for its first year of life and then you got to give it away. Like you
mm,
got to let it
mm,
go.
mm,
So
mm,
the selflessness of that, the ability to look at yourself as part of a very, very important supply chain,
mm,
and the fact that if we don't have the puppy raisers, then we can't do this ourselves. We can't have like 60 in-house trainers.
mm,
So the puppy raisers are invaluable. The ones that I really like hearing from are the ones that are like, it is the hardest thing ever. So the only way I can do it is to swap them out. So we
mm.
we raise one up till a year, and then we bring on the next one. And then it's like, how cool is that then too? Because you're living your life in the puppy phase. Like you
Yeah,
get
I know. That's what's
right?
crazy, man. You
Like you
never
get a
get the good
puppy
thing of an adult dog.
every year. Like you hear people say that, like I only like them when they're puppies, and then they become dogs. Well, here's your opportunity. Like you can have a puppy, you
Mm,
know, every year of your life while you're also providing a baseline need in the production of service dogs to potentially save someone's life.
yeah, that's legacy. That's the kind of life to build a legacy on. Yeah, it's impressive. I love
For
it.
sure.
Love it.
All right.
Incredible.
Well, we both have poured our hearts out into this outdoor world and nonprofits. Let's take a turn and talk a little bit about corporate America because we
Mm,
both went that direction too. Like we both we covered a lot of ground in a few hours last night in catching
mm-hmm,
up over about 10 years time. And
mm-hmm,
we both were in situations where we were passionate about what we were doing. We also thought like our financial ships had come in, and now we find ourselves back doing passion projects. So like it's super interesting how parallel this
mm-hmm,
has been,
mm-hmm.
but yet how full both of our hearts are with
Yeah,
where we are today. I
yeah,
think it's pretty
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, my last job, I did some stuff in agency leadership for experiential marketing agencies and full service marketing agencies, and that was all rewarding and good and lucrative. My last job was just so special to me. I was working in the outdoor industry for a company called Ketchco, and the most recognized brand we have is Mystery Tackle Box. Mystery Tackle Box is the number one gift in fishing. It started as a subscription service. Now 80% of them are sold through retail doors like Walmart, Dick's Sporting Goods. You could even buy it during the holidays at places like Kohl's because it's the number one gift in fishing. And so that was a big deal. And then we had a handful of other brands. And there's a venture-backed thing. And just to make a long story short, venture-backed companies had a really tough time. A lot of outdoor companies had a tough time, and venture-backed companies had a tough time post-COVID. It's big boom, supply chain changed, and a lot of people bought a lot of stuff. You couldn't really keep up, and then we all had an inventory problem with too much inventory. And so the company became insolvent in 2023. And a small group of us stuck around and kind of saved the company. And so I was really proud of saving the company. The company grew from a garage to like $80 million in 10 years, and then we kind of busted and then saved it. And so I'm really proud to have saved it. Got to do some really fun stuff along the way. Had some incredibly painful things along the way, but where I ended up in that arc was being a fishing lure salesman to Walmart and Dick's Sporting Goods and Academy and Kohl's and all these guys. And you'd think, oh, that seems like a great job, man. You got a lot of salesmanship. You love fishing. And really, if you're a fishing lure salesman at the enterprise level, you could just as well be selling shoelaces or anything, right? enterprise sales is really about spreadsheets. It's not very relational. It's not like you're like, oh, I get to take the buyers from Walmart fishing. They literally cannot do that. You can't do that stuff. You don't get to do it. It's not part of it. You get to go to things like ICAST, but it's just running from meeting to meeting. You might as well be at any other industry convention. You're in Las Vegas or Florida or whatever, and you're just... It doesn't matter. It wasn't very fulfilling, and I can do analytical things. I can live in spreadsheets and Zooms and getting yelled at by a corporate buyer who's trying to beat you down over pennies, but it's not very rewarding, And so, my dad died, and when he died, my mom had died 17 years before, and so it was just him, and my brother and I are in the house where my dad, raised us, my parents raised us. And, I opened this box, and in this box, these African artifacts. And I'm like, African artifacts? Why are these African artifacts in here? I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. I have like a great aunt and uncle who were missionaries in Africa, and I'm a Christian. So like, that's a big deal to me, But I couldn't remember their names. And I thought I'd remember. My dad has told me who they were, but I forgot. And I couldn't ask my dad. And he was the youngest, he was the youngest of three. So there's nobody left to ask. And it really got to me, Yeah. And then I found this, Brandon, people who are listening can't see it, but I found this diary. And this diary is not their diary. It's my great-grandmother's diary on my mom's side. And this woman, I did know. I knew her, knew my great-grandmother. She lived until I was 20 years old. And so I really knew this lady. I mentioned my mom and grandma would take us fishing every week. Well, then we'd go back to the house where my great-grandmother would be sitting in the rocking chair, and we'd tell her the story of our day at the lake. So I really knew this lady. And she came here to Iowa, where I live. This woman, who I knew in my life, she came here to Iowa in a covered wagon. And the reason she was coming here to Iowa is because they had homesteaded in South Dakota, and her mother died in childbirth. And her grieving father was bringing her back to Iowa, where his parents were from, because in those days, around the turn of the century, like no men would raise kids. They wouldn't know how. So he was going to try to get them closer to his mother to help raise them. And along the journey, their wagon was struck by lightning, and her siblings on either side of her were killed.
Oh, man.
But she lived.
Yeah.
She lived. And one result of that is that I live. And one result of that is that my kids live. But the life she knew, where they maybe lived on a fistful of cornmeal a day, and the life my kids know, where they have nothing but a radical abundance, not only of food, but of choices in food, so much so that if I brought home the wrong brand of chicken nuggets, they'd lose their minds as if I had skinned them. And they can't, that's not their fault. They can't know that.
Yeah.
But I knew her, and I know them. And it's my responsibility to bridge that gap. And to give to them some of the grit that she gave to my grandmother, that she gave to my mother, that she gave to me. It's my responsibility to pass along that grit, which is very much at risk in this present age of extraordinary comfort, that my kids would not only know the abundance of food and abundance of choices of food, they'd also know nothing but an extraordinarily comfortable bed and incredible stability. And so it's my responsibility. And I became so committed to this that I thought, I'm going to make a film about it. Not that, because I've always done that sort of thing. And not so much that it wouldn't be for them like the forgotten missionary, that they would know her. They would know her story because I can tell it. And then as I began making that for their sake and for the sake of my family, I'm like, this is all I'm going to do. I'm doing this for our families. This is so important. And so I started Fascination Film Studio to do this for families. And as it turns out, a lot of families really want and need this. And so I'm employed now by families who want to preserve their legacy. They want to recognize their heritage, the ones who came before them, and honor those people, but they also want to create legacy for themselves for the sake of the ones they love. And then, as it turns out, companies and communities want this too. So I'm also doing a documentary right now about Estherville, Iowa. How did this town ever get here? What have we been through as a town? And where are we headed? Right? And so I'm getting to work for communities and companies and nonprofits like yours, and I'm getting to work for families, and it's unbelievable joy. And now, increasingly, people are like, can you just come talk about that? Can you just come tell us about that? How do we do this? Tell me how to do this. So I'm really, really loving this life. Lots more than I did selling fish and lures, Brandon.
Well, that's what's so fun about doing this podcast is like every week we get to talk to somebody or a few people or however many are on the podcast that week about their lives. And you get to know people when you go at least an hour. I'd love to be able to do the Joe Rogan and go 3 hours. Right now I got a bunch of people looking at me waiting. We got to get out the door and go fishing.
Yeah.
We've got a trip.
We
got to go.
Yeah.
But you do, man. Like you get to hear all these different iterations of life and work and family and what they're passionate about. And there's commonalities through it all. There's differences through it all. But ultimately, people are looking for ways to be remembered and to remember those that they love. And that's what's so cool about the outdoors, man, is there anywhere better? Like I wrote my newspaper column this morning about going to the fly fishing show in Denver and how great it was, because I'm now 46. When I was 10, my grandpa would take me out of school and take me to the Chicago Sports Show. And there I got to gaze upon the stars, Al Linder, Bill Dance, Dave Winkleman, get photographs of those guys and keep them in my scrapbook, get beef jerky by the bagful, get a whole shopping bag full of brochures about Canadian outfitters and opportunities in Wisconsin and Minnesota and Kentucky Lake and Reelfoot Lake in these places. And I would spread them out on the floor and just dream of going to all these places. And now that I've done that, now that I've been fortunate to realize that dream of being able to travel, and not only travel to fish, but to actually get paid to do it sometimes and make a career out of this passion for sharing information about the outdoors, like those guys I was looking up to at those sports shows, it dawned on me that the real connectivity of it all, though, was that grandpa and the fact that he took what he had available, which was time, and invested it in me and took me to that sports show.
Yeah.
Now, did he think that this career, this unbelievably cool life I'm living now, would have manifested from that? I don't think so. He never once said, you should try to do this. Somebody, is going to have to be next, and you could be in that vein. I don't think that ever dawned on him. He was World War II era. I just needed to get a job, and take 1 week of vacation a year and go to Minnesota and spend the other 51 weeks reading in preparation for that 1 week of getting skunked at Lake Osakis. And, but that's what happened to the seed that he planted. The seed that he planted, it grew. And here I am today because of that investment of time. And as sports shows have really started to disappear across the country or dwindle, at least drastically dwindle in size, it was super cool to see that Denver fly fishing show so vibrant and so enthusiastic. And I sat in on 2 seminars. I went there because I wanted to see one seminar specifically by Pat Dorsey that owns the Blue Quill Angler in on the South Platte in Evergreen, Cheeseman Canyon, Deckers, that whole area. One of the premier trout waters in the country. And he was going to talk about his favorite trout streams of Colorado. And I wanted to hear what he had to say, to reiterate some of the things that I already thought I knew, but also to learn new things. So I went to that. That was super cool. But I had like a half an hour to kill before his started. So I went to a Bahamas
Mm.
tourism talk. And the
Mm.
guy giving the talk was an outfitter, but also a lifelong resident of the Bahamas.
Mm.
And man, he earned his money, whoever
Mm.
paid for him to be there, because I've been Googling Bahamas bone fishing trips and permit opportunities since I got back. So it was really, really cool just to like absorb information from other people, absorb the energy of the crowd of everyone that was there for the same reason I was, because they love to fly fish. They're looking at new gear. They're interested to see certain people and they want to learn about new places.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
how cool is it that in communications and in your filmmaking and in your, capturing of legacies, you're going to help people be able to pass that generationally like on. And
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean about not knowing those people's names, because I do feel like I did a pretty good job when I was young of being inquisitive and
Mhm.
asking those questions and trying to know my family and trying to meet my family. And I see other members of my family that could not give a shit less. Like they're
Mhm.
just not
Mhm.
interested in, who their great 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 grandfather was. I think a lot of people are. But I still find myself all the time seeing a photograph and being like, grandma would be able to tell me who that was,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
grandma's gone, and that entire, like you said, that entire generation is gone. Um, which is why what you're doing is so important, man.
Thanks.
Like it really
Yeah.
is. And people should consider that. Like the first podcast I did was Conservation Federation when I
Mhm.
was running CFM. The first series I did.
Mhm.
And of that series, numerous people are now deceased.
Mhm.
John Lewis, who was the turkey
Mhm.
biologist in Missouri at the time that
Mhm.
turkey restoration efforts began. Glenn Chambers, who was like a renowned artist and an MDC employee, loved because of his personality, despised by many for being the guy who brought otters back to rivers and
Gotcha.
streams all over the state.
Yeah.
Um, they passed on, and to this day, I hear from their family like, we're so glad that there's an hour and a half of their story
Right.
recorded in audio that is going to live forever. Like we
Yeah.
didn't understand like the importance of it for that hour and a half he was
Sure.
doing it.
Sure.
And now that he's been gone for 5 years and we can go back and listen to his voice and listen to his stories, like how much is that worth?
It's worth a
Like if you
lot.
think like, what would it cost to hire Teej to do this legacy film for us? I don't know. But what would it cost to not be able to hear those stories one more time, or to
Right.
not have that recorded history of your family? So
Yeah.
if there's
Yeah.
anything worth investing in, or if, like I'm not trying to set your business model for you, but I will throw some plugs out. Like think about like gifts. You hear people say all the time, like, what will we buy grandpa? He has everything. Like the
Right.
man doesn't need anything. I can't buy him anything he doesn't already have or he doesn't want. Buy him an interview. Buy
It's
him an opportunity to sit in
yeah.
front of a camera and tell you stories about his grandparents that you never met, to
Yeah.
tell you stories about what it was like in his day and time, so that your grandkids can watch this long after he's gone.
Yeah.
I think that would be
It's
amazing.
it's one of the main ways that I'm getting that families are contracting our services is as a gift. And so like in my family, this year at Christmas I on my wife's side of the family, it's an agricultural family. She grew up on a farm, and her dad's 85, and the farm that he grew up on has been in the Reuter family since 1913. And this year, 2024, was the last year they're going to farm it.
Mm.
He can't he can't do it anymore, you know. So I
Mm-hmm.
went up there and brought cameras up to film the last harvest.
Mm.
And then we started talking to the family about their memories on the farm and, finding old pictures about the farm. And I put together a film, and at Christmas we got together and we watched it. And he said, he is not an emotional guy. He's a stoic Midwestern farmer. But it brought tears to his eyes. And he said,
Mm.
we're all there in the living room. We'd all watched it. It was emotional for all of us. And he said, I want you to make me a promise that when Mom and I are gone, you'll get together and watch this.
Yeah. So, and
It's
you will.
really meaningful work. It's really
Yeah.
meaningful work. And the other thing it's doing, man, we live in a time where in a generation, the generation that's coming up now, they're known as the anxiety generation, right? Like they have grown up in a time where everything is presented to them as an existential, like this is the election that's going to determine the world is going to burn to the ground and die if it's not this. So everything is presented as this is it. This is it. The world's going to burn up. It's all bad. And presenting to them, hey, the people before you, they went through some really bad things and they made it. And the people, then the next people, they went through some really hard things and they made it. And you know what? You're going to make it too. And when people see themselves in a film, reframes everything for them, changes the way they see themselves. And by looking at the ones who have gone before us, it tells us who we are. And we can make it too. And so it can do a lot. It can do a lot. But it can also do great things for a company. It can also do great things for a community. So I'm in the way that I think you feel really gratified by the work you're doing, and you should, I'm feeling the same thing. A lot of gratification for the outcomes that are being produced by pointing a camera at people and then helping them shape the narrative of who they are,
That's incredible, man. Well, we got to wrap it up, or I'm going to be late to the party that I'm.
Can't have that.
Can't have it without me. So I got to get on the road. We're going to leave that as kind of our conclusion. We normally do what we call the mystery bait bucket, but Shags keeps it. We don't have it. You would love this, dude. It's an old antique bait bucket. We get questions sent in. They're usually random, whatever it may be. We don't have that in front of me, so I'm just going to make one up because I'm interested in knowing, like, if you could sit down and do an interview with anybody, who would it be?
Brandon
Dead
Butler.
or alive?
Brandon Butler.
No, you just did that.
Okay, Jesus, man. Like, that's it for me. He's dead and alive, right? He's dead and alive, but he's he's everything. To me, he's everything. He is everything. The Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. He's the floor and the ceiling and everything, every wall. He's just everything. He's everything beyond the walls. He's just everything. He's the air. So there's nobody else for me. Like, that's the easy answer. It's like, that's the thing. If you're a Sunday school kid, which I was not a Sunday school kid for what it's worth, Jesus is always the right answer, but he's my answer. And that's it.
Cool. For me, I guess I don't know the answer to my own question. That's a tough one to beat. I mean, it's a tough one to top Jesus, but I think Theodore Roosevelt always comes to mind for me. Just to sit across from that guy. Even if I didn't get to talk to him, I wanted to be in a room with him just to see if you could feel the energy. Like, I'm sure it was magnetic when Roosevelt was fired up and in his groove. You see those old speeches. You can listen to a couple. There's a couple old speeches that you can actually listen to his voice. And man, I just feel like that'd be, incredible to just be around his magnetism and experience that. So, man, I am so glad that we have reconnected and just scratched the surface on this first film of the different things that, I believe this reunion is going to bring. So thank you for your interest. Thank you for coming over last night and doing it. Everybody enjoyed your presence. Everyone enjoyed you being there. I think it's really cool when, the guy behind the camera can also just become part of the entire experience and make people feel comfortable, put people at ease, make them want to be part of what we're like creating. And you did all those things. So
thanks, Brandon.
Thank you very much.
Genuinely my pleasure. I can't wait to join you for the next one. I'm grateful, so excited about what you're doing there, and of course I love the podcast. So, long-time listener, first-time guest.
First-time guest. Yeah, well, it won't be the last time. If you're a long-time listener, though, you probably know that we end every episode with a gear review. I didn't prepare you for that, so I apologize. I have mine, which is going to be the challenge coin. Do you have anything laying about, something that you use, something that you feel you
Mm,
could share some information about with all of our viewers and listeners?
I should have drug a camera in here. I'm going to talk about so many of our. This is interesting. I'm going to talk about the Osmo Pocket by DJI. Okay.
Okay.
And so many of us, when we're having these outdoor experiences, we want to record that experience. And the phone we carry in our pocket now does such a terrific job of it. You barely need anything else. But it's funny, as I'm doing heritage films for families, and in order to do the film, we sit them down, we interview them, but then I say, give me all your old 8mm and all your old VHS tapes and all your photo albums. And back when we had to use film cameras, we were real selective of when we'd pull the trigger and take a picture because, you're spending money every time you do it. So you get a lot of pictures of birthdays, you get a lot of pictures of Christmas, and then you get you get some wedding pictures, and then you get pictures of vacation. But really what you see is pictures of the outdoors. People take pictures of themselves fishing or hunting or the outdoors. You see like landscapes because the time we went to South Dakota or the time we went to Georgia or whatever. That's what people photograph because it's so important to them. Like these experiences, encounters in the outdoors are so valuable to us. And that's not different now. Like every dad has a YouTube channel. Me and my kids have one too, right? Because we love these outdoor experiences. The Osmo Pocket will make you a cinematographer. It's so good. And there's this mic that comes with it if you get the creator version. So when I was building Fascination Film Studio, I talked to some of my filmmaker buddies. I'm like, well, what should I do? I'm a Sony guy, I like Sony. What kind of cameras do I need? Whatever. I was talking to this one filmmaker who shoots on like $100,000 cameras. He shoots for like BBC Planet Earth. He's got the really nice stuff. And I told him what I was going to do, and he said, dude, go buy an Osmo Pocket. You're going to use that thing all the time. He's like, yeah, I have a red camera. A lot of my cameras, $20,000, $30,000 lenses on them. I pulled that several $100 Osmo Pocket out all the time because it's just right there. It's right there, and it just works immediately. And it's gimbal mounted. It's got a little gimbal, so it steadies everything out. And it's just so good. That little camera is so good. You can make really, really good stuff. And so if you like to play around outside and you want to record some of it, use your cell phone. If you want to go the next step up, I love that Osmo Pocket by DJI. I'm not getting paid for this. I don't work with them or anything. I just love that camera. And everybody I know who's doing stuff with film and video and whatever, they're like, I can't believe that Osmo Pocket.
Well, I do get paid by mine. I'm going to do the challenge coin. So here it is. This is what we were talking about. So if you can see this little rectangle at the bottom, every challenge coin has a number on it. This is challenge coin 0115, so it's 115. It's got the Retrieving Freedom logo on it, and then the back is pretty cool too. It's got the dog. Cool. So the goal then, of course, is to get this to somebody who will take it, register it, and then pass it forward to the next person who will go on and register it. So if you're interested in having a challenge coin, all you got to do is email us at info@retrievingfreedom.org. You can reach out to me directly at brandon@retrievingfreedom.org. I will get you a challenge coin. You can register it, and you can see if you can beat me and Teej in changing the most lives by producing funds to play service dogs with veterans and children with autism. So Retrieving Freedom Challenge Coin helped me do this. I bought 1,000 of them. As of this morning, 25 are registered.
Nice.
Only got 975 to go. So
love it. Awesome. Okay. Well,
all right, man. You did hit on Jesus with the interview. I want to say thank you for being such a good example in this industry. I've been in the industry a long time. I've had some really, really good friends in the industry. But when it comes to good men, you are right at the top of the mountain, my friend. And
that's kind of you.
I appreciate that. I feel the pull towards it. And I'm just glad that there have been guys like you fishing for guys like me for a long time. So
well, I just want to thank you for that. And I just want to make it super clear. It's not that I was good enough that Jesus said, okay, you can be on the team. If there's any good you've seen in me, you've just seen him through me. I was no good. It is him. It's him. It's him. He made
All right. We will see you down the trail. All right,
That's a
man.
good way to end, man. Thank you for
Was
that. Oh, man. I love you. I'm grateful for this. I'm going to go look right now and see if I have that challenge coin. If I don't, I want you to send me a number and then sooner or later send me the coin.
all right, man. We'll do it.
Okay. Have a great time down there at Trout Opener.
Thanks. Talk to you real soon.
See you. Bye.